Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm really happy to have you here with me today. We are going to be doing a ton of canning today. Let me show you. We are canning 500 pounds of tomatoes. So this is some of them, and the rest of them are over here. And my kids pointed out to me that this is 1/4 of a ton of tomatoes. So it is a lot of tomatoes. My plan in today's video is to share with you all of the different steps that I have put into place over the years to make big bulk canning days like this as stress-free as possible. Step one is the day before you are going to start canning is to really start thinking about your recipes and the ingredients that you need for whatever you're going to make. This is a pretty easy thing for me to do for today because I'm going to be making primarily a very simple tomato sauce and just canning tomatoes plain. So make sure that you have all the ingredients you need, and some of the things to consider when you're canning particularly tomatoes is that you do need something to acidify your tomatoes. Most of the tomatoes that you're going to grow today or buy today have a relatively low acid level. So it's kind of right on the borderline of what is safe. So you do need something to acidify those tomatoes. In this case, I am using bottled lemon juice. And the reason that I've chosen bottled lemon juice instead of fresh lemons is number one, this is a lot less expensive and a lot less work. But also because the acidity level that is in this bottled lemon juice is regulated, so it's very consistent, whereas the acidity levels of lemons themselves can vary from lemon to lemon, so you don't really have a consistent product to work with. So I just find this easier and safer. And the only other ingredient that I need is salt, so I just use a kosher salt, and I have lots of boxes of that, so I have everything that I need for that. So once you have all of your ingredients and all of your recipes printed out, just to make it easier on yourself for canning day, I always find that getting up really early and making sure that my kitchen area is super clean, but not just my kitchen area, but any area that I can see from my kitchen, I like that to be clean and uncluttered as well. Because canning can cause a lot of clutter and mess in the space, having the space that is around where I am going to actually be canning clean and clutter-free really does help keep my stress level a little bit lower. So that's probably more a personality thing, but it does really help in my case. So once we have the space clean, I like to assemble everything that I need for canning. So that includes all of my ingredients. It includes all of the equipment that I need, make sure everything is clean and ready to go, get all of my jars that I need washed and ready, my my lids and my rings all ready to go, and put in one central location. Makes it so much easier once I actually get into the flow of canning. Dan and I got up early this morning and we did that. We got this whole entire space cleaned before the kids woke up, and all of the jars washed and everything kind of assembled and ready to go. So the other thing that I really like to do on canning days is organize the meals that I'm gonna make. So for today, we're having oatmeal. We actually have the oatmeal ready to go right there. We're gonna sit down and have breakfast in just a couple minutes. We're going to have tomato soup for lunch because we're working with all these tomatoes, so why not? And homemade tomato soup is really easy to make. So we're gonna make that for lunch. And then by dinner time, when the kitchen is going to be an absolute disaster, we're actually going to make dinner outside. So we're gonna use our barbecue and have barbecue chicken. And I have a burner outside that we're actually going to be using for canning all day long, but we're going to set up a big pot and have corn on the cob. So we'll have corn on the cob and chicken for dinner, and that mess can stay outside. We're even going to eat outside. So having all of that stuff planned in the morning, any meat you need taken out of the freezer or anything like that can really help to mitigate the stress of a big canning day like this. So on that note, we're just going to take a pause right here, have our breakfast, get the kitchen all cleaned up again, and then we're gonna get into actually processing all of these tomatoes. Okay, so now we are on to actually canning tomatoes themselves, but this could be applied to any product. So you want to get whatever you're canning nice and clean or prepped in whatever way it needs to be prepped. So in this case, I am canning Roma paste tomatoes. These are my favorite tomatoes to can for sauces and pretty much anything actually. And the reason for that is because there's not a ton of juice in them. They're nice and meaty and the skins are nice and thin. And why that's important for me with the way that we're going to be canning today is because I am going to be canning my tomatoes with the skin on. One of the reasons that you might want to peel your tomatoes is because they can harbor bacteria. This is the reason why I'm washing mine in hot water, is to make sure that they're nice and clean. I can also check them. You can see here beside me, I have a pile of tomatoes that were mushy or rotting or anything like that. So I want to just put those aside, and those will go out to the chickens. So I'm only picking the best, most pristine looking tomatoes, and I'm washing them really well so that they don't have a lot of bacteria being harbored in the skin. I also like to put a splash of vinegar in the water too, just for a little bit of added protection. So outside of the possible bacteria that might be harbored on the skin, some people say that the skin themselves can impart a bitter flavor on your canned products. I have never personally found that to be an issue, so it's not something that I worry about. Also, when I am making sauces, I run them through either my food processor or my Vitamix blender, which makes them nice and smooth. I never have issues with tough little bits of skin, which it can be another complaint that people have about canning tomatoes with skins on, is that the skins can get tough, but I've never had an issue with that either. In the case of canning such a large amount of tomatoes like I am today, this is obviously my preferred method because it does eliminate the step of having to peel my tomatoes. My family is helping with this next step. We're cutting off this end here and then quartering the tomatoes, putting them in big buckets and pots, and I'm going to be cooking these on the stove. We're going to be hot packing our tomatoes today, and I'll talk more about that when we get to that point. But this obviously helps make it go much, much faster. Many hands make light work, as they say. I am going to be doing all the actual canning itself, and this stage or part of the process is only going to take us probably half an hour. So keeping things kind of simple, making sure that your kids have some things that they can do, maybe some things that they don't get to do on an average day, or a little bit of extra screen time, things like that can really, really help to keep everybody happy and kids occupied. So we're just on to our third box now, just about onto the fourth, and I think we're only about 15 minutes in to this part of the prep work. Obviously doing something like salsa, so when we did our salsa the other day, the chopping is a lot more time consuming because all the pieces have to be chopped into really small pieces. So one of the other reasons I do it this way when I'm going to do a large batch, just quartering them and cooking them down, is because it's faster. And we want to try to make things as efficient as humanly possible when we're doing canning like this. So changing out the water in between boxes helps to keep everything that much cleaner. So far, 3 boxes and only that many bad tomatoes. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. So we have 20 boxes of tomatoes to get through. 4 canners is obviously going to make much shorter work of this than if I only had 1 canner. The nice thing about tomatoes is they are something that you can water bath can. It's just important to make sure that you do, like I said, add that extra acidity to your product. It is recommended to add the extra acid. Hang on, I'm just going to dump another box in. To add the extra acid even if you are pressure canning. And I'll be honest, I think that's one of those things that's probably going to change as far as regulations go down the road, in the same way that needing to sterilize all of your jars and your lids and stuff has changed since I first started canning. When I first started canning, that was common practice, but now it is known that obviously if a product is going to boil for 10 minutes or longer, then it's being sterilized. So the jar, the lid, and everything that's in that water bath canner or pressure canner is being sterilized by that process. Because it doesn't really make sense to me that you would need to add extra acidity to canned tomatoes in a pressure canner when you can can things that have 0 acid in them, like meat, for instance, without adding extra acidity, because the process of pressure canning itself actually kills all of the potential bacteria and things that would be in it. And that's why you use a pressure canner for low acid food. That's the exact reason. So if anybody else knows why that would be a recommendation to add the extra acid to your canned tomato products, I would love to know, because it doesn't really make sense to me. So that being said, I do it anyway because I don't personally mind the added, like the lemon flavor doesn't really bother me with adding the lemon juice. If it is something that bothers you, you can use citric acid, which I do have as well, but I prefer to use lemon juice. So yeah, like I said, I'm gonna add it anyway, because why not? So this is our last box here. And then I am going to get my water bath canner going outside so it starts heating up. I have a big 9-quart water bath canner, and it takes quite a long time to actually heat up. So we'll get that one going, and then I'm going to be using my steam canner and my 2 pressure canners. You can pressure can or water bath can tomato products. I'll talk about all the times and stuff like that when we get to that point. If you have any blemishes like this on your tomatoes, you can still totally can these, just cut that blemish spot off. If you do want to skin your tomatoes, all you have to do is put them in boiling water for 3 minutes and then dunk them into the coldest water you can. Ice water is the best. And then the skins just peel right off. All the chopping is now done. I have 2 pots on the stove that I'm heating up right now. Like I said, I'm going to hot pack, and the reason for wanting to do hot packing today is because I don't want to have to cool my canners down in between loads, and you obviously don't want to take a cold jar and put it into a hot canner, so I'm going to hot pack so that everything is the same temperature. One thing I will caution you on if you are going to do that is if your canner is actually boiling, you're going to need to cool it down with a little bit of cold water, because if you put even a hot product in a jar into a boiling canner, you will probably end up with cracking in your jars. I was thinking about some of the other things that I do that are kind of unconscious things that I do to try to make canning days like this easier. And one of them is to wear comfortable clothing. And I don't normally wear shoes in my house, but I wear shoes in my house on canning day. And the reason for that is I absolutely hate stepping on mushy bits of things with my socked feet. So mushy things on the floor is pretty much a guarantee when you're doing canning like this. So I find just wearing shoes a lot more comfortable. Plus, I'm going to be on my feet all day long, so I make sure that I pick really comfortable shoes that are going to give me a little bit of extra support. I also pick comfortable clothing. So I usually will pick something like coveralls or something that I know I'm not going to have to be hiking up, like my pants, or that are just comfortable to wear. One of the other things that I do, and this might seem kind of weird, but it makes me feel better, is I try to make sure that I get ready in the morning. So instead of just getting up and getting at it with my pajamas on and then having to stop and brush my teeth and all of that kind of stuff, because honestly that doesn't actually happen when I do that. It'll be the end of the day and I'll haven't brushed my teeth or my hair or anything, is to actually get up in the morning and get ready just like I normally would. Get my teeth brushed, put on some mascara, put my hair up or whatever. And the reason that I do that is because it just helps to set my day off on the right foot from the beginning. And the other thing that I do, and you probably have noticed this in the kitchen, for the most part, I wear my hair up. This isn't particularly important when you're doing preserving food. It's obviously not that big of a deal if you're making dinner for your family or whatever. But when you're preserving food, you don't want hair to get into your food. So keeping your hair up and out of your face is a really good idea as well. What we're gonna do here is cook these tomatoes down just a little bit, just enough to heat them through and soften them. And then I'm going to run my immersion blender. I'm not sure if I'll do my immersion blender or if I'll run it through the blender or the food processor. I'll decide when I get to that point, just to make a really simple, chunky sauce. If you want a nice thick sauce that you don't have to cook down when you actually open the jar and use them, then cook down your sauce until it gets to the thickness that you want, usually around 90 minutes or so when you're making a simple tomato sauce like this. Because again, I'm doing everything on a bulk level, I'm not that worried about saving myself the time in the winter to have to cook my sauce down a little bit more. I'd rather save it today so that I can actually get all of these tomatoes through the canner and onto the pantry shelves rather than having any of them go bad. I have always done large bulk days like this with tomatoes, peaches, and cherries usually. And that's because up until 4 years ago, I would buy all of those more heat-loving fruits and vegetables from a farm several hours south of us. So it was much more economical for me to go buy 500 or 600 pounds of fruits and vegetables and bring them back and just preserve them over a couple of days. One of the things that I used to do that I did not do this time, and it was more just because I'm out of practice with this, is that I didn't check to make sure that my tomatoes were at various stages of ripeness. What I used to do is buy boxes all the way from green right up until really ripe, start with the really ripe ones and then work my way down over a week or two. And that way I didn't have to can everything all at once. I didn't do that this time. All of these tomatoes are ready to go. They probably have a few days. They're still nice and firm. They're not mushy, but there's definitely a bit more pressure to get them canned than there used to be when I used to be more in practice of doing this kind of canning. I'm just going to give these tomatoes a stir over here and chat with you a little bit about why it is that I bought tomatoes when I have a high tunnel that for the last couple of years has provided the majority of the tomatoes that we have needed for our farm. And that is because it has been such a unstable year as far as the weather goes for us, that my tomatoes are quite far behind compared to what they usually are. And I'm genuinely not sure if we're going to be able to get that many tomatoes out of it. If we get an extended warm spell into the fall, then I probably will. And I'm obviously going to get lots of green tomatoes. So my rationale with deciding how much to buy and to buy such a large quantity like this is that there's the possibility I won't get a great harvest. But even if I do, it just means that I'm going to have more canned tomato products on my pantry shelves, which is fine. We use a lot of tomato products during the winter time. Sometimes I'll use even up to 6 quarts in a recipe. So there's no real chance of them going bad or me making too much or having too much on my pantry shelves. Plus, canned tomatoes can last a couple of years on the pantry shelf. So even if I end up with extra next year and say we have a great bumper harvest of tomatoes next year, then I just have extra on my shelves, and that's good. But maybe we'll have another year like this year where it's not such a great year, and I'll be really thankful that I put up extra. So either way, it's not going to hurt to have these extra tomatoes here. One of the things that's really great about all these extra boxes we're going to have, we have 20, actually 25 because we got some peppers and other things as well, is that I can put my canning jars in these, and they have a lid so that I can stack them in my storage shed. So these are fantastic. Super happy about that. I get questions every single time I film a canning video about using my glass top stove for canning. And what I always say is use your own discretion, do research on the stove that you have because each stove is rated for a different weight, and make sure that you are comfortable with and that your stove can withstand the amount of weight that you're going to put on it. I have this double burner out here. So I have tomatoes on one side. I'm going to put my steam canner on here once I'm done heating up all these tomatoes. And then I have my 9-quart canner over here that is actually, probably don't need to have the lid on that. So this is actually heated up enough. So I'm going to turn this one off and let this just sit, because like I said earlier, I don't want to go put hot jars into even hotter water because I can still end up with cracking in that case. So this is warm enough that it shouldn't take long to bring it up to a boil once I get my jars in there. One of the nice things about heating up your tomatoes like this is that a lot of the juice will come out of it. So even if I just wanted to can my tomatoes plain, I could just use the juice that's coming out of the tomatoes themselves instead of water, which gives you a lot more flavor in your canned tomato product. Like I said, my plan is just to heat these up till they're soft enough to run through. I think I'm probably going to use my immersion blender just to get everything broken up into nice small pieces, and I'm just going to can it straight up in its own juice. 2 tablespoons of lemon juice per quart and a teaspoon of salt. And because this is liquid like it is, we don't need to debubble. So debubble is when we just want to stick a skewer or something down the sides to get out any bubbles that might be trapped inside of our jar. You know what I think I'm going to do is set up a table out there beside my canner so that I can do this part right beside my canner so I don't have to carry these hot jars outside. I have fantasies of one day having an outdoor kitchen. But in the meantime, I think this is gonna work just fine. Lower our jars, and we want an inch of water above our jars. And we're not gonna set our timer on this until it's actually boiling. One of the things that you can do is run your tomatoes once they've been heated up like this through a food mill, and that will remove the seeds and the skins if you'd like to do that. It's actually a lot easier to do that than it is to blanch and peel if you're doing huge batches like this, but I don't mind the seeds or the skins. So I'm gonna skip that step too. I'm gonna need a table set up outside anyways to put all my jars on when they come out of the canner. So this super simple tomato sauce, I don't even know if you could call it a sauce, mashed up tomatoes, is, I'm gonna be using this for a base for everything that I make. Soups, stews, chilies, things like that, butter chicken. You can even use this to make tomato soup. I'm gonna show you how I make a very simple tomato soup with fresh tomatoes for lunch today. But you can basically do the same thing that I'm gonna do with this canned tomato sauce. So it's a really great base. The last couple of years when I've been canning tomatoes as they've come out of the canner, I've been making a lot more prepared products, which is super convenient, that's for sure. Being able to have a tomato sauce that's ready to go on pasta is fabulous. But every year is a little bit different, I find, with our needs around preserving. Okay, now we're gonna be able to get the second canner running. I'm just gonna quickly check and see if our canner outside's boiling yet. So this one, we're gonna do 45 minutes for the water bath. I have all of the tomatoes, so the 4 boxes, the 100 pounds of tomatoes, all either cooked down already or in the process of cooking down. So I think what I am going to do is get my steam canner going outside with this batch that I have right here, that I am just going to wash the rims on. Very, very important, washing rims when you're canning, because one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that when your jar gets really hot and you get something around the rim of it, so you're putting your hot product in there and the jar heats up, it almost cooks the product on the edge of your jar so that it kind of forms just cooked on chunks onto it. And that can definitely impact your seal. And nothing frustrates me more than jars that don't seal. I have had incredibly good luck with my 4 jars lids. So I switched over to 4 jars lids this year. I used to use other lids that I had used for years and years and years. Nothing wrong with those lids. They work as well, but these ones work better in my experience, in my opinion. So far, out of all of the jars that we've canned this year, I think we're at 600, something like that. We have only had maybe 2 lid failures, and I would attribute those lid failures not actually to the lids themselves, but to maybe I didn't wash the rim off well enough or something like that, or there was maybe a nick in the rim of my jar. That's actually another benefit of cleaning your rims, is you can usually feel if there's a little nick or something that you might not be able to see with the naked eye. Anyway, I'm so happy with these lids. I do have a link down below and a discount code for 10% off if you are looking for canning lids right now, or you'd like to stock up. The nice thing is they do sell their canning lids in bulk, which is fantastic for those of us that can on a larger scale, or just even to have backup lids. Such an awesome thing. Okay, so I'm gonna get these in the steam canner outside. I'm going to jar up the next round and get the pressure canner set up, and I'll run you through that when we get to that point as far as the amount of time, pounds per pressure, and all of that. So I'm going to get these over into the steam canner, get the next batch jarred up and put into the pressure canner on the stove, and then I think we're going to do another round of chopping another 100 pounds of tomatoes. In your pressure canner, you want 2 to 3 inches of water. In the bottom of your canner, you can add a splash of vinegar to your canners if you have hard water, and that helps to get rid of any of water scaly hard water stains that might go on your jars. Do keep in mind that if you use too much, you will corrode your rings a little bit. My steam canner right here is called a Fruit Saver. That's the brand, and you can get it on Amazon. I don't know if I have a link for it in my Amazon store or not. If not, I'll go in there and put one in. I am terrible for remembering to put links for products in my Amazon store. I really should go in there and just spend an hour and do it. Our canner has been venting for 10 minutes, and now we're gonna put our weighted gauge on. And I'm doing it at 15 pounds of pressure for 25 minutes, but you're gonna need to adjust your time and your pressure according to your elevation. Okay, started on the soup over here, and I have about half a cup of butter. Butter is the secret ingredient for this soup. And into this, I'm going to throw 2 chopped onions, and they don't have to be chopped fine or anything, and 2 cloves of garlic. So my idea of having my timer out by the canner I'm using was obviously not a good one, since I actually need it in here so I can hear it. So I have my timers lined up right under you on the windowsill here so that I can keep track of each one. So my big water bath canner, the 9-quart one, is just about to finish. So I'm gonna jar up my next batch to go in there. And while I'm doing that, I have my onions and my garlic cooking until they're nice and soft in that butter. And you don't have to worry about the sizes. They can be pretty chunky because we're actually gonna run this through the Vitamix when we are ready to serve it up. I'm going to add a little bit of rosemary to this, not very much because it's strong. So we're gonna fill our pot here with tomatoes, and then we're gonna let that all cook down together till everything's soft. This is what happens when you forget to put vinegar in your water and you have high mineral content in your water. So this will just wash off, but I'll make sure I add vinegar for the next round. So I just pulled these up. I've waited 5 minutes so that they have a chance to cool down a little bit. And I'm just gonna set them on this table over here. So all I've done here is blend up the tomatoes, the onions, the garlic, and the butter, and the rosemary in the blender, and then added my cream while the blender was going. I just find that that helps to have it not curdle, or even if it does curdle, it just mixes in really well and makes a nice creamy soup. And then we're gonna serve this with salt and pepper and a little bit of grated cheddar cheese. My daughter made a whole bunch of whole wheat buns the other day, such a huge batch that she was able to freeze some of them. So we're also going to eat that with the tomato soup. It's one of our favorite things to eat this time of year. And like I said, you can use the canned tomatoes that we're making today to make this kind of tomato soup in the wintertime when you don't have fresh tomatoes to work with. So we're gonna stop, have a lunch break right now, and we'll be back with you again shortly. All right, my friends, it is time for an update. We are up to 100 quarts canned. We have 12 of the 20 boxes chopped. There's only 3 bowls left that I need to cook down and run through the canner. So I think by the end of today, we will have all 12 of those boxes done. So then we have 8 boxes left to finish off tomorrow. So we're gonna totally be able to accomplish this goal of getting all this canning done in 2 days. I have to admit, I'm getting pretty bored of canning tomatoes at this point. So I think what I might do is turn a couple of these bowls of, or pots of tomatoes into barbecue sauce. We go through a lot of barbecue sauce, so I want to make a lot of barbecue sauce. So I think we'll probably do 2 large pots like this of barbecue sauce. I don't make things like ketchup. It's very time consuming to make. And we go through so much ketchup in our house that I don't think I could ever can enough to actually meet our needs when it comes to ketchup use. And like I said, I already have the salsa. Somebody suggested tomato jam, but I already have enough jam to last us the year, so I don't want to can any more jam. I'll pull out some of my canning books and see if I can't find some other fun recipes to do, just so that I can kind of break up the monotony of just canning plain tomatoes. I think what we'll do at this point is call it a day for today as far as filming goes, and be back with you again tomorrow, show you what we ended up with as far as all of the plain tomato sauce goes, and then I'll show you how I make the barbecue sauce, and we'll get all of that canned up. So we'll see you tomorrow. Bye. All right, my friends, we are at, what time is it here? It is 5 p.m. the following day. So we have finished all of the tomato canning. I'm so tired of canning tomatoes now at this point, but I'm really happy to have this much canning done all at once like this and not have to worry about it again. The tomatoes that are coming out of the greenhouse are going to come out slowly, and I'm going to use those to make some funner things like enchilada sauce. I want to make a whole bunch of enchilada sauce. We made a couple of pints of it last year and it was absolutely delicious and a huge hit. I have my last batch of tomatoes in the pressure canner here, and some tomatoes in here that are starting to cook down, and then I'm going to run these through the food mill. And in the oven, I have some roasted onions, garlic, and peppers that are going to be going into our barbecue sauce. I wanted a little bit of a smoky flavor. That's why I did that. So let me show you all the jars we got. I don't have an official tally yet, but we're definitely nearing around 200 quarts. So we have all these tomatoes over here. This is the batch that's going to be going in the house once the pressure canner is done. I ran out of propane on my outdoor burner, so the rest of the cooking is going to happen indoors. And all of these quarts. Oh, there's a few more. Every surface in my kitchen is taken up by tomatoes right now. Last year, and we're missing one of the legs, but that's okay. It's still going to work just fine. So the ingredients that we're going to use for this barbecue sauce are vinegar, of course, ginger, some red pepper flakes, celery seed and cinnamon, lemon juice, and salt. Oh, brown sugar as well. I need my brown sugar. And I think we'll add a splash of molasses too. I'll link the recipe that I'm using as inspiration for this down in the show notes for you. And there is a wasp. 1 second here. There you go, buddy. Out you go. There we go. Last year was absolutely terrible for wasps, but this year doesn't seem to be nearly as bad, which is great because the door is being opened and closed constantly, especially with me canning outside on the deck. And we've only had a few wasps in the house today. I am still wearing the same shirt that I was wearing yesterday, but my overalls were so filthy dirty, I had to change those. But my shirt was still clean enough to get away with another day. Okay, I'm just gonna pull the garlic and peppers and such out of the oven. No more pressure canner. Oh my goodness, pressure canner going for 2 days straight was a lot. Just 1 second. And we'll stir all of this goodness in here. I am going to wait until I can move the pressure canner, which as soon as it cools down I'll be able to, and bring in the other batch of tomatoes and get that one cooking down too. And this is probably going to take about 3 hours to cook down on the stove. If my roaster oven was not broken currently, I would be throwing all of this in the roast oven and just slow cooking it overnight. But since it is, I'm going to do it on the stove. It's a lot faster on the stove. It just requires a little bit more babysitting so that it doesn't scorch. And I might decide that I'm going to run it through the Vitamix after to make it super smooth, but I'll decide at that point. I did decide to use the blender, super easy to pour it into the jars from the blender, and then I got everything lidded up and put in the canner. I was asking myself last night whether this was actually worth it, spending the last 2 days straight canning all of these jars. We ended up with 232 jars all together, with 26 of those being pints and the rest of them being quarts. And I have to admit that by last night at bedtime, I was definitely feeling like it was not worth it because I was so tired. But now that we're on to the next day, I've had a chance to have a shower, freshen everything up again, get the kitchen all cleaned back up again. I feel like it was 100% worth all the effort. This was definitely the largest batch day of canning that I have done this year, and I won't be doing another one again, at least not this large. The rest of them are probably around the 50 quart mark that I'll be doing. So that's for potatoes and bone broth. I'm going to be doing a bunch of turkey broth because we're going to be processing our turkeys here pretty quick. What else do I have to do? All of the tomatoes that are going to be coming out of the high tunnel. I'm going to be making enchilada sauce, probably some more barbecue sauce and some other fancier things with those tomatoes. So there's still a lot of canning left yet to do, but nothing on this scale. I am looking forward to getting all of these jars brought down to the pantry and actually put on the pantry shelves. It is such a wonderful feeling after so much work of the gardening season, from starting in February when I start seeds to getting everything put out in the greenhouses, planted out in the garden, tended to all summer long, harvested, and then finally processed, putting them actually into my pantry and being able to walk into my pantry and seeing all of those jars kind of glittering on the shelves is such a wonderful and satisfying feeling. And there's a lot of security that goes into that for me because we have all that food to last us throughout the entire winter. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, everyone. I really appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.